Welcome to Barrio Voices, where we highlight the voices of our barrios, familias, and communities. This is Velas, and I hope you're having a good one. Sit back and enjoy la plática. Órale. Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Barrio Voices, and Happy New Year to everybody out there. It's really a pleasure to be starting off this year, sharing some palabra, and encouraging y'all to, how to take care of the outdoors, enjoying the outdoors, and how to include our raza in that kind of environment. And here, in order for us to have a deep and profound talk about the topic, we have Mayra here. You want to introduce yourself and tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
For sure. My name is Mayra. This is not my first time being in the podcast, so I'm really grateful to have this platform to share some of my thoughts.
Yeah, you all have heard her probably in the podcast, like 5 times by now and stuff like that. She's doing a lot of dope work, it's worthy of highlighting, and so, it's a pleasure having you here as well, but today we're going to be talking about, something different. We usually never talk about this together, but, besides the podcast, we always do it in the personal life and chop it up about this. But for others, I want to know more about wildlife conservation, especially as a Latino trying to, find ways to provide to our communities. What is one way that we could, or what is it that you're doing, right, to actually make sure that our input, our voices are included when it comes down to what's being done, by policy making or anything like that. Within our own natural spaces.
For sure. I think, so firstly, I really want to talk about my research because I am still needing some surveys for my data collection, but to put it in the big picture, big perspective, I want to learn more about the ways that we can, I like this word in Spanish, involucrar, involve the Latino community in the conservation of wildlife, or just learning about what it is to have conservation, to have wildlife conservation specific, because a lot of the times we don't think about that when we're thinking about bringing people of color into the outdoors. And there's a big movement that is going about bringing BIPOC communities to the outdoors. And I think this is really important because I feel like we've been deprived of it for so long, and the environmental science movement, the conservation movement is all pretty much portrayed as this white space. And in a lot of ways it's true because a lot of it is very colonial, but I think there is a lot of space for us to move forward and be more involved in what it is that conservation movement will look like. And I'm excited to bring that to the perspective of the Latino community.
Yeah, and I think something else that I come to experience in my past too is when it comes down to volunteering or just being in that space as a outsider, I guess I would say, for myself, my personal experience, it's definitely hard to speak their language. I would say they have a different kind of slang, and just the culture behind that space, the environmental science kind of space is a different one compared to growing up, going to a bodega, and just be in our own neighborhoods, but it's definitely a imposter syndrome kind of experience, and I think it's really important for us to really kind of break that down and go into that space knowing that we also need to be heard, we also need to be taken into account, because for one example, in our local communities, right, in the more I would say raza influenced communities or neighborhoods, right, there's not too many access to parks, there's not too many access to outdoor spaces as much as there is in other more wealthy and well off communities or neighborhoods, and so for us it's a lot harder to, for one, have access to that, right, and two, to advocate for more access. How is that we actually have our voices heard through our city council members and other folks that have that power to actually make those decisions for us too.
Just thinking a lot about how you're saying about imposter syndrome and how getting involved with volunteering with environmental organizations, I think that speaks a lot to the theories and the theology specifically with the people who wanted preservation of these natural spaces or conservation. John Muir wanted to have everything being preserved for people to go and be in solitude. And thinking about that, like as a Latina, as like a, as part of my identity, I wouldn't want to go to the outdoors just to be in solitude. I'd like to see, I like to bring my family to it. I like to experience and share their experience of the natural world, of peace, of, just being in connection with Pachamama, with Mother Nature. And I want to share with my entire community, which is kind of like the opposite of what these big, theories and theologies had planned for preserving the lands. But I do think it's very important to get involved in learning about how to preserve, how to get more involved in conservation and in learning about what it is that we want to conserve and why. So thinking about right now, the COVID-19 virus was a virus that basically came from the contact of like humans. It jumped from an animal to humans, right? And I was reading some articles that talked about how with climate change and with everything that is happening now, there's a high likelihood that there's going to be more of these viruses like Ebola, like COVID, that are going to be springing from animals to humans. And this is a lot due to the deforestation, to the kind of like destruction of all of these habitats, right? That has caused these animals to have nowhere to go, or has caused a lot of these individuals in areas where there's wildlife to merge their livelihoods with animals, and that causes like there's nowhere for anybody to go. And I think that's super important to start thinking about that, to start thinking about how our daily life would also impact that of the animals, which will impact that of climate change and habitats and all of that. But I recognize that it's super hard to do that when you are, managing 3 jobs and like living through a pandemic and thinking about what's going to be the next step. So I definitely think that it's super important for all of these nonprofit organizations that are local, all of these like Parks and Rec at the city, at the county, at the state level, have to do more to reach out to the community and to really cater to the community for what would be the best ways for us to learn and to engage in this type of conservation.
And I know you've been in conversations with a lot of different folks that have provided resources. I think, what are some of the things that you have come to see in common with all the people that you've been interviewing already?
Yeah, so my research is wildlife value orientations of the Latino community, which basically encompasses kind of like depending on your values and attitude, is kind of tells what kind of things you'd be interested in. If you're more of a dominant or more of a mutualistic, if you're more of a dominant, I think you're more likely to participate in hunting and fishing and other activities kind of like to do with wildlife consumption and things like that. But if you're more mutualistic, it places you on doing things like bird watching, or just learning more about the species, or learning more specific conservation methods. And for this research, I am conducting surveys of people who identify as Latino, Latina in San Jose, but I'm also conducting interviews with key informants who have worked in this area of conservation or this area of the environment and bringing people outdoors. And what I have found so far is that people do want to provide resources in Spanish. They want to provide resources that are more culturally relevant, but there's just simply not a staff member that can maybe translate this to Spanish, or can have that cultural competence, or those trainings for everybody to take to make curriculum even more inclusive to the Latina community. Aside from that, I've just heard that there's just not a lot of participation because resources are limited, as it's with most organizations.
Yeah, and I think also when we come to think about like how you mentioned, like, there's often like that wanting of resources, right? People are trying to do whatever they can to push for those resources to be implemented within the communities, pero también we have a chance to also do something too to really make that change happen, right? In order for us to have a bilingual summer camp. So look, I said, in order for us to have like that bridge into like being out there in nature, and enjoying that kind of a recreational activity, right? And I think for now, like it'll be great for like people to know how could they support you with this study that you have going on. Like what are ways that people could actually take action today, and what's the word, contribute to what you're doing right now.
Yeah, so I think the whole we completely missed the point. So I'm a graduate student at San Jose State University, and I'm working on my thesis. My thesis is in wildlife value orientations of the Latina community of San Jose specifically, and it has to be San Jose specifically just because of like statistical significance or whatever. But I am taking surveys, and I'm hoping to have a large enough amount of surveys that I can present this as my thesis. And basically, folks are invited to take this survey where there's some questions that they get to answer, and they're placed on a dominant versus mutualistic kind of scale, and that would give some insight as to the parks in the city, in the county, and other nonprofits as to what kind of curriculum they want to put up. If they maybe want to have more curriculum about like fishing, getting a fishing license, getting a hunting license, or more about like bird watching and what are the birds in your area or what are the insects in your area, and so on, as well as thinking more about what are some of the specific programs the Latina community in San Jose want to see in the local parks to learn about wildlife conservation. And to me, that was super important because as an immigrant, I grew up in Mexico, and I lived in a ranchito in a small town until the age of 13, and my connection with wildlife was completely different than it was when I migrated here to San Jose. I had a lot more access to like learning about birds, and it was just like a deeper connection. My great grandma used to have some birds, and I remember she'd buy songbirds and wake up every morning and like feed them and tell me all about what they were and the types of foods they ate, and it was part of like our family, you know. But then coming here, there was a completely lack of that connection, más que nada. And there was no way for me to go hiking, camping, or learning about any of this wildlife. So there was a disconnect until I got to college, and I learned more about these connections and the ways that people here interpret like wildlife and wildlife conservation. I also thought it important because I think of just kind of like wildlife like snakes, right? And snakes for the Latino community who are mainly through Catholicism, the snake is a terrible animal, like it's the devil or whatever, you know. But in reality, like snakes are not that bad, and snakes are really cute, and we have a lot of them that are non-poisonous here. So thinking about how folks who maybe migrated or are first generation, second generation have either the same interpretation as their parents or not.
In addition to that, like yeah, there's a lot of different things that we get to learn from our community, right? About nature, right? I remember también growing up, and they'll tell me like, oh, just by looking at the sky, you could tell when it's gonna rain, you know. If like there's a ring around the moon, that means it's gonna be cold tomorrow. Or también like when is it that we sembrar, when do we plant seeds, right? It's like it'll be like I don't know, it'll be like the right seed. Como dijeron que it's like I don't know, but like just by looking at like what's going on with the weather and like the moon cycles y todo, we were able to actually plant at the right time and just cosechar at the right time and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things that are within our communities that we could continue further evolving and learning more about. And I think again, if we are provided the opportunity to teach and stuff like that, that'd be great, you know. So again, it's the kind of how Mayra said, if we have more folks that were able to be hired, right, to speak about those kind of things, that'd be amazing as well. And so there's a lot of great things that would come with the result of this contribution that y'all are providing, right? Filling out the survey for Mayra will be definitely a step forward in providing those inclusive curriculum to our communities that definitely need it, and hopefully opening opportunities for those that want to teach their curriculum to actually have the ability to be like, oh, this is something that I'm down for, that I want to teach and stuff like that. So yeah, that's one way that you could support, like I mentioned, filling out the survey. But is there any other comments you want to share, Mayra, about like the importance of nature, or like any ways that other people could be further involved with this process, or any other things that they could do within their communities?
Yeah, I just want to encourage folks to share my survey. Please, it would be a really, really great help for it to be statistically significant. I have to get I don't want to get all nerdy, but if there is a 90% confidence level, which is still pretty low, and a 5% margin of error, has to be 278 surveys, and I only have 200. And if I wanted to have a 99% confidence level at a 5% margin of error, I'd have to have 400 surveys. So any survey counts to make this count. I am a first generation Latina, trying to complete my master's degree, and that in itself is super challenging. So if you have 15 minutes to spare, it does take 15 minutes. My hope was to have done them in person with folks in parks that maybe didn't have access to internet, or maybe didn't have the ability to write and read. But unfortunately, COVID has not allowed me to do that. So if you have 15 minutes to spare, and if you live in San Jose, and if you identify as Chicano, Chicana, Latinx, Chicanx, please do fill out my survey. If you don't live in San Jose, if you could please share it with all of your family and friends that live in San Jose. I think, Arturo, you're going to put the links, and all of your support matters. And if you have time, just go outdoors and go explore what wildlife is in your area, what birds, what snakes, what insects. It's all part of nature, and it's all part of the life that we exist with. And hopefully you get some inspiration from it.
There you go. There you all have it. And some Mr. Powerful and Beautiful Palabras from Mayra. Again, bringing us all the wisdom for the fifth time, possibly. And just encouraging us to, continue contributing onto our communities, There's an amazing example of a versatile individual that's doing a lot of different things for the community, right? And I believe, también that you'll have the potential of doing something amazing like that too. So hopefully this empowers you to do the same thing. Hopefully this empowers you to check in with your abuelitas and talk about how to plant un árbol or anything like that, or es cosechar or whatever, Anything, that this in any way that this further goes to enlighten you, that makes me happy, what I mean. But overall, I just want to thank you all again for all being tuned to Barrio Voices, where we highlight the voices of our barrios, familias, and communities. This is Velas, and to you all, Feliz Año Nuevo. Oh,